Good afternoon, everyone, and a very warm welcome on a rather cool day to isifundi training and to the first in our new six-part Bite-Sized Corrosion series, where we are celebrating women in corrosion and engineering. My name is Vanessa Seeley Fisher, and it's my great honor and pleasure to host today's conversation. As this is Women's Month in South Africa, we decided this would be an appropriate time to spend some time meeting and getting to know just a few of the incredible women in the corrosion engineering space. I was so encouraged earlier today when I read a report in Cape Business News, which just demonstrated how in recent years the number of women studying engineering in South Africa has grown significantly across all disciplines, mechanical, civil, electrical. And there's now a promising pipeline of female engineers entering the workforce. But I believe that it's absolutely critical for these young women to see someone like them succeeding in what we all know has been a traditionally male space. And that's what we're also trying to encourage with this Bite-Sized Corrosion series, to highlight women in corrosion and engineering, women who are excelling, that they will encourage others to follow in their footsteps. And so I'm thrilled today to welcome the first of these inspiring and exciting women, Lerato Kanetsi, and she's joining us at the microphone today. Now, Lerato is the senior engineer in the engineering department at Muela Hydropower plant in Lesotho. And Lerato is responsible for all of the engineering works on the hydropower plant and the water delivery and transfer infrastructure. So welcome, Lerato. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you, Vanessa. Thank you for having me.
It's only a pleasure. Now, Lerato, your journey as a woman at Muela Hydropower plant is a really interesting one. Would you like to share a few of the highlights that you've experienced through your career?
All right. Surprising enough, I did not join the hydropower station as a corrosion engineer. I started as a mechanical engineer in 2012. That's when I joined the power station. And then I was in training for about 2 years. Then I got appointed in the position. And then a few years later, I was appointed as a senior engineer in the engineering department. So that is the journey of my career at this power station.
Excellent. Now, I'm intrigued. Obviously, I've been privileged enough to catch a few glimpses of the hydropower plant, although not while it was in operation. But what would a typical day in the life of a hydropower plant engineer look like?
Well, when we arrive here, the first thing we have to do is just to catch up on what has been happening since we knocked off. So the plant runs 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, but I and my team come in on a normal working day. So the first thing we do when we arrive is to contact the control room, find out what happened while we were not here, if there were any incidents or not, or if anything is still outstanding. Then if there's an emergency, that's what we start with. We prioritize that emergency. We assist them with troubleshooting because the main purpose is to keep the plant running at all times and to avoid any shutdowns that are not planned. So if there's an emergency, we assist them with the troubleshooting. And once the production is back up, then we can continue with our daily plans. So like I mentioned, that the main focus of our job is to keep the plant running and not to cut production, because the hydropower plant is the only hydropower plant in the country. So the whole country depends on it. So if there are no emergencies, what we do is we do our routine inspections. We go around the plant, try to see if there are any anomalies. Then we collect data. We have various equipment installed that monitors the health of the plant. So we have to collect data from those instruments, then come back and sit down and analyze the data that we've collected. That helps us monitor the performance of the plant and to actually see if any of our equipment is aging. So if it's starting to age, then we have to develop a plan on how to repair it or refurbish it or get it replaced, depending on the stage of its life cycle. Right. So from there, anything that needs to be refurbished or repaired goes through some planning for preventative maintenance. We have our routines, our annual routines, where we shut down the station and we do that type of maintenance. So
Right.
we plan when and how we're going to do those shutdowns. And for any major components that have reached their life cycle, then we have to have a longer term plan where we look at the actual date that is going to reach its end of life cycle. Then we plan ahead, we procure whatever equipment needs to replace it, and then we coordinate with all the stakeholders, let them know that the plant will be out for a certain amount of time at a certain date, well ahead of time, preferably at least 5 years before the outage. So just to allow for the long lead items to be procured and all stakeholders to make any arrangements that needs to be done. And then from there is the implementation of our plans. And thereafter, we just monitor the performance of the plant and see if what we've implemented is working. And then the cycle starts all over again.
Wow, Lerato, I can see this responsibility for planning these major maintenance projects is actually quite challenging because 5 years is a long time in anyone's calendar, and yet you've got to be anticipating well in advance. I know that we do that in our day-to-day life, trying to anticipate what can happen, but I don't usually try and anticipate things that will happen in 5 years. Sometimes 5 minutes is all I can deal with. Now, I know that you were very involved in facilitating and overseeing the recent Lesotho Highlands water maintenance shut. And just for our viewers to say that Lerato and her colleague, Mr. Rinsing Molapo, graciously spent time with Isifundi and recorded a session for our new Engineering Thoughts series, where they discussed this really interesting project. I really encourage you to watch the interview. In that quite long maintenance shut period, was the primary reason for that shut corrosion prevention, or were there other reasons that the plant was shut at the end of last year?
That is the primary reason. This one was actually planned way ahead. It was planned since 2012, so it's more than 10 years ago. So the tunnel inspections are scheduled every 10 years.
Okay.
Because we don't want to interrupt water supply to South Africa. And also, we don't want to stress the tunnels too much.
Hadn't thought of that.
The dewatering and the filling up process can be strenuous on the structure itself. So it is recommended to shut it down every 5 to 10 years. So we maximize it as much as possible, and we inspect every 10 years. So the first inspection that I was involved in was in 2012, because that's when I basically arrived. And the inspections are usually 3 months. So it's a 3 months shutdown, but the first month and the last month are for dewatering the tunnels and filling the tunnels.
Okay.
So the inspection is basically a month. And during that inspection, that's when we discovered that the steel linings in the tunnels have started to show some blistering. Yes. So at the time, it was mostly intercoat blistering. And then there were a few that were through the bare metal. So the Lesotho Highlands Water Project decided that we need to plan an outage that will deal with that. So in 2019, 5 years later, the plan was to do patch repair works on the areas that showed the defects. But when we opened the tunnel in 2019, we discovered that the rate of deterioration is quite high. So we did do the patchworks in areas that we could, because we only had a month. But then we decided that let's plan for a bigger outage that will take 6 months to allow us to completely reblast the entire surface area of the steel linings in all the sections of the tunnels and then recoat them. So
that was a major undertaking, and congratulations on accomplishing it. And the steel liners, I'm sure, actually are only just a small portion of the steel infrastructure that could actually corrode. I know in our involvement, we were focused entirely on those steel liners, but there must be other areas where corrosion is a significant player.
It is. Actually, the entire hydropower plant is a mechanical structure. It's made out of steel. And of course, it has civil structures. Because
Mm-hmm.
we are generating using water, we have multiple dam walls. We have a dam that is a reservoir. Should I say a reservoir or a dam? It's actually a dam at
Mm-hmm.
Katsi that collects all the water that we use, but it is
Mm-hmm.
fed by another dam at Mohale. So it's two dams upstream, and then it's the tunnel itself. It has concrete lining, and
Mm-hmm.
then we have the steel liners, and then we have another dam downstream of the hydropower plant. So it's three big dams that are
Mm-hmm.
concrete structures that need special attention for corrosion protection. And then the plant itself, the plant is basically, it has pipes, valves, turbines, everything inside it is a steel structure. So it is quite a large portion of my job to take care of the corrosion protection of the hydropower
Wow.
plant. Because even though
And
it generates electricity, but it uses mechanical structures
yes,
that are basically steel, most of them.
still looking for a place to corrode, and you're providing this lovely, damp, water-rich environment for the corrosion to continue. And
Yes.
I guess earlier when you mentioned long lead items, I'm sure that corroding turbines or damage to valves, those must be quite a headache because you can't just go to your local hardware and replace them.
Yes, you can't find them anywhere.
Mm.
Definitely not in Lesotho. So even in South Africa, some
Mm.
of the components are quite hard to find. So most of them are imported. We deal with suppliers within South Africa, but the manufacturers are overseas. So that's why we need to plan well ahead of time for
Yes,
damage that may occur. We cannot afford to run the plant to failure and then replace as and when it fails. So the turbines, especially the major component, which is the turbine, 18 months lead time, just to give an example. So
yes.
that's why we have to really, really be careful and monitor it closely. And anytime that we see that it's starting to have a defect, start planning on what to do.
Yes. I'm not sure if you want to answer this question, but have you had to replace a turbine due to corrosion? And you can say no, no comment.
We haven't had to replace it due to corrosion, but we
Hmm.
had to repair it because of the high speed. There's a lot of turbulence in there, so the turbine blades cavitate a lot. So we often
Right.
have to weld repair them. But we do have a spare turbine just in case because we don't know what would happen when. So just to have some backup.
At least with that spare turbine around, you can sleep at night.
At least.
And know that you wake up to power in the morning. Now,
Yes.
obviously, during that major shut, the power station was not generating power for Lesotho, and that I'm sure was challenging. And but I've been doing some reading, and I understand that the LHWP phase two is obviously in progress. And that system not only includes, I think it's the Polihali Dam, but also the development of the Oxbow hydropower scheme. If you look at Moella, have you been able to contribute in any way to give recommendations or suggestions, things that you think could be improved in the new power scheme based on the experiences at Moella?
Yes, the team there, we interact with the design team that is
Mm.
working on. So the whole idea is for the maintenance section to give recommendations or suggestions to the design team at this stage. Because what we have realized is when you are designing and constructing, you are focusing on that. So the maintenance aspect is not looked into. So we have
Yes.
realized we've had challenges, especially with access. When you're trying to maintain a certain portion of the plant, you realize that because when they were constructing, they did it in stages, and that was the first stage that was done. And then the other areas are built around that component. It wasn't envisaged that we would someday need to take that component out. So you have to sometimes be destructive, break
Mhm.
some structures. So the LHWP just saw that, okay, when moving into the second phase, if we just include the maintenance team and then we can sit around the table every now and then and share ideas, it is going to help the design team have a better view of what to expect in the future.
That is so valuable, Lerato. I think you've hit on something that's really an aspect of engineering that is very often overlooked, is that the constructability is the key thing, but the maintenance is completely forgotten. Like they'll fix it, but the logistics of how to fix it aren't always thought through. And yes, the necessity to destroy in order to repair just is crazy, but I can understand how that happens. Kudos to the team for thinking about involving you to give them the kind of lived experience of actually running and operating the system. That's really great that you can add that value at this stage in the development of that new project. So when Oxbow gets commissioned, will that be a new home for you, do you think?
I will consider it. But it's very cold up there, very cold. But
Right.
it would be interesting to have experience and exposure in a different environment.
Yes, that would be very interesting.
Yes.
Now, Lerato, you made a comment at the start of our conversation that you didn't start in corrosion. And that is true that in general, engineers don't get much exposure, especially mechanical engineers, to corrosion at university. And so I wondered if I could ask you, where have you learned your knowledge about corrosion? Have you just, oh gosh, that's corrosion, and learned entirely through your experience? Or have there been areas where you've been able to gather knowledge and increase your own expertise because you really are becoming quite a corrosion expert?
Initially, I got exposed to corrosion in the plant because when you monitor the plant, you realize that you might have coated the equipment, but they still deteriorating and they're still corroding. It was quite interesting. I didn't understand what was happening. So we decided, let's just search for some training that we can get because the entire team was not exposed to corrosion. We were faced with this big project that we had to take care of, but there were certain things we didn't understand because we thought if we just coat a component, you're protecting it. We were not aware of the extent you have to take or the effort you have to put into surface preparation and all that. So one of my colleagues who was actually a senior engineer at the time when I was an engineer searched through the internet and came across Corrosion Institute of Southern Africa. So that's where I got some training. I went there, had my corrosion inspector. I did the corrosion inspector program, level 1 and level 2. So I did receive a lot of training from them. It's not just the experience. That's where I got my exposure.
And again, sad that as an industry, the engineering faculties haven't thought about educating the mechanical people, the civil people about corrosion. And unfortunately, it becomes a course that's largely dealt with by the metallurgists, when in fact you deal with corrosion, you see it, you don't know how it's going, you think you're going to coat it, you realize that coating is more than just throwing some paint on the wall of your house.
Yes,
well, I'm thrilled that you found somewhere.
Yes, I think it's quite important that they should include that in the curriculum, maybe, because as a mechanical engineer, you are taught how to maintain the equipment, how to make sure that all the components are running smoothly, they are not wearing it. There's no wear and tear, but they don't talk about corrosion and the damage and the actual damage it can cause. And that could actually be more destructive to the structure more than the wear and tear. So I think it's quite important that the engineers are exposed to this, that they get to understand the concepts behind corrosion.
Well, I'm hoping there's some academics online with us who can take that little nugget of information from you, Lerato, and let's see a change in the curriculum. Just thought as we start to wind up, engineering has definitely been regarded as a man's world. And I wondered if you felt you've faced moments where you've had to prove, or you felt you've had to prove yourself more than your male counterparts. And associated with that, how did you navigate that?
I definitely have because, I work around a lot of males, and because they are dominant in this industry, everybody is expecting them to perform well. And they are watching whether you will be able to perform the same at the same level. I found that it's just to work hard, basically. You need to be consistent, work hard consistently, and then at the end of the day, people will see that you are capable of what you're capable of. So it's not about focusing on the competition per se or trying to prove yourself above the male counterparts. It's basically just to work hard and work smart consistently, and then at the end of the day, you will reap the results.
Indeed, as you are showing, and it's so wonderful that within Lesotho, that the Lesotho Highlands Water Project has recognized and hasn't been constrained by gender specification, but has welcomed your expertise and promoted you according to your competence, rather than either promoting you or denying you based on your gender. And that's really encouraging. And I'm so excited because increasingly we see really competent women in the industry, and a lot of women who maybe are no longer having to prove that they are better than, as you said, not competing, but just prove that they are competent to do the work they're doing. And I do believe that women can bring a different perspective. We are not the same as men. We look at things differently, and I think sometimes just that different perspective can be helpful in helping us all together to find solutions to the challenges.
That is very correct. And I realized that in most cases, because engineering, most of the things need physical strength.
Yes.
So because we don't have that, we have an opportunity to think outside the box and bring in new ideas on how to make our work simpler, use different tools and different mechanisms. So that is still an advantage, that with a male, they don't have to think about what other options do I have. But if you don't have that muscle, we bring in different ideas or different angles of approaching things. So you're quite right to say we think differently.
Yes, and that's encouraging because I think they're synergistic. And it's wonderful when one works with colleagues who are prepared to provide some of that muscle strength. And we can bring some of the different perspectives. Lerato, thank you. This really has been such a lovely discussion. Thank you for sharing some of your story and giving us some insight into areas of engineering and even corrosion engineering, which we may not have been familiar with or have thought of. And I wonder if you would be willing to join me as a guest on our new upcoming Engineering Thoughts series in the near future.
Definitely, I would love to.
Thank you. And I'm sure our audience would find that helpful to explore a broader aspect of the work that you do and not just focus on corrosion, which has obviously been the focus of today's conversation. So thank you to you, Lerato, for giving us some food for thought. And I do thank our audience for joining us today. And I hope that you enjoyed our discussion just as much as I have. I encourage you to keep curious and have a wonderful afternoon. Thank you for being with us.